welcome back. I've got Erica Zygelman online. Erica, how have you been?
Hi, I've been all right. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Been looking forward to this conversation for quite a bit. So, we interacted on I forget what platform it was,
I think Lunch
but
Club.
oh, that's right, Lunch Club. That's right, and we realized, both have San Diego ties and all of that, but we're not originally from that area. So, why don't you share a little bit about you, and then we'll dive into the conversation.
Yeah. So my name is Erica Zygelman. I'm an integrative leadership coach and a former media executive, worked in advertising for agencies, startups, tech companies for about 15 years before having my own journey with burnout there and back a couple of times, and then decided to educate myself and acquired a new toolkit of skills. And now I support leaders who are in corporate so that they can tend to themselves and be more conscious leaders and avoid burnout. So we clearly had a lot to geek out on together.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that always comes to mind too when I think about people that are working in the corporate space that are dealing with burnout and all of that, there's many of us that have left corporate, quote unquote, and went on our own or doing something else, maybe a nonprofit or who knows. But the key thing to remember is we can't have everybody leave corporate because of burnout, because then there won't be any corporate.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we have to approach this from a different vantage point, with the goal, of course, is to make
Mhm.
those important people in every layer of the corporate entities healthy and productive, and actually reaping the benefits of their work, and enjoying what they do again. And there's a lot of people that do, and it's not,
Yeah.
we don't want to paint this picture where 100% of people are burned out. We're not there yet, and I certainly hope we never do get there. But depending on the industry and depending on the role, the numbers are higher than other areas, and it's alarming, because I
Yeah.
you know what burnout tastes like. I know what it tastes like. It's not fun. I don't like seeing people go through it. I don't want them to go through it. I know you don't either. So that's why it's so important for the work that we're doing, is to show people, there's a way out of this, and you can still, stay in the type of role that you're in right now. Maybe not at that company. Maybe you will stay at that company. Hard to say, but at least you got to have the tools and figure out why you're burning out, what you're doing, what are the external factors that are contributing to it, and sort through it that way, and ultimately, hopefully, end up being wiser and healthier and just a better employee and a better person after doing all the work.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think with my personal experience and my journey, I had to go through my own personal healing and like really acknowledging what was happening. It took someone else to tell me like these feelings that you're having and this pure fatigue and exhaustion, all these things are symptoms of burnout. And I didn't even realize. So it was like my own aha moment. And then my own journey. And then at this time, I was still in corporate, managing client services function at a very large tech company. And I realized I had an opportunity from within to shift how I was showing up and to give permission and model for my team, how to work and take care of myself in a different way that was more sustainable. And I started to notice the ripple effect of that. And ultimately, I decided to remove myself from the corporate environment, but I reach back in now from, with an outside perspective to help educate and uplift and transform those leaders so that they can have a ripple effect. And that's really where I see the impact. When we start with the leaders, they are modeling it for the generations, the rising leaders that will follow them. And we can have that be a toxic model, or we can have it be a healthy, sustainable model. We just need to teach them and guide them how.
And that's the key thing, is just teaching them, because the way that they learned was probably a combination of the leaders, or executives that they've worked with in the past, and they
Exactly.
kind of borrowed some habits, some good, some maybe not so good, and that's just how they do it. And they can't approach things in a different way. And having somebody like yourself that has obviously the corporate background, they'll listen to you because
Mhm.
you've been in the trenches. You know what it's like, and you can say, "Yep, there's this and this, and here's a different way to approach it." And if
Mhm.
you do this, then you will get better performance out of yourself, and you'll get better performance out of your team because they're mimicking you. And that's the thing that a lot of executives don't really notice, is that their team is behaving the way that their executive is. So if they're working 18-hour days, sending emails, 11 p.m. on a Saturday night and doing all this work, your employees are thinking, well, that's what's expected of me. It,
Absolutely.
and many executives would say, if you ask them, do you expect your employees to work at Saturday night, 11 o'clock on a non-urgent matter? And they'd say no. So, well, you're sending them emails and
Right? Yeah.
they think that you need to respond that. Now, they're out, they might be at the club or out to dinner or a concert or something like that. And all of a sudden they get this Slack message of need to update this presentation. And all of a sudden that's the only thing that's on that employee's mind right now. Could be
Exactly.
completely removed from wherever they're at. And it's like I always tell people, it's like, as hard as it is, like just put your phone on do not disturb. Or I know
Mhm.
it does have an off button. I found that on my iBinky not too long ago. I'm like, this thing turns off. Wow, I didn't know that. I knew it'd die if it ran out of battery, but you could actually choose to shut this thing off.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that must have been a new feature. I don't remember that before, but I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
most people won't.
Exactly. And the percentage of time, depends on the industry and the field that you're in. If you're in healthcare, this might be very different than you work in media, but it's very rarely a true emergency, right? A true business emergency that needs to be attended to in that minute. But like you said, it hijacks your attention. So even if there's nothing you can do about it, or it's not necessary for you to take an action, you're now taken out of the present moment and having a parallel experience to what you're actually doing, and which also means that we don't have that time to recover. So I think staying in that constant state of vigilance and like always waiting for that next Slack to come in or email to come in, or urgent request from your boss or your client, like keeps us in this elevated, activated state with adrenaline and cortisol constantly running. And then when you have time off, you can't really unplug. We're like addicted to that. So I know I'm preaching to the choir, but that's what happens. And if leaders aren't aware that they're contributing to that, that's a huge opportunity to inform them and to shift these behaviors from the top down.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of that. I called it. I actually published an article not too long ago on my blog about addiction to email, basically.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
what I purposely did, not with your email, but with most of the emails that I get, I set up a separate email account if it's a newsletter or it's a lead magnet or something like that. So I have everything driven to that email address. So that way it kind of keeps my business email account relatively clean, other than just business inquiries and client work and things like that. So the other day I went to log in at the other email, and there were 60 new emails that came in that morning. And I thought, okay, this is way too much. It's like, and I'm not saying that those email, I signed up for them. They weren't just like spam, they showed up. No, these are separate emails that I had signed up for with all great content. But the problem is, if you spend all your time looking at those 60 emails and all the messages, and again, all of them were rock solid good, it takes you away from what you should be working on. Pick two or three things that are your most important things to do that's going to move your business, your career, whatever forward. If it meets the criteria of those three, then by all means, sign up for it, read the email, but apply it. Do something with it, make a note of it or apply it. Otherwise, you're basically reading the newspaper. And it's again not knocking anybody that has I sent out emails to, but what I ended up doing is like, you know what, this is too distracting to me. So I had a choice: either delete the email account or just unsubscribe. And I went through and just unsubscribed pretty much all of them. And
Yeah.
and if anybody's listening and you got my unsubscribe, it's nothing personal. It's just it was taking too much time away. So now my inbox, it's a lot, a lot less emails are coming in. It's business specific mostly and all of that. So I'm finding that thing you just talked about. It's like, wait a minute, I didn't get a message. Oh, gotta go check my message. Gotta go check my. So it's something that I found myself guilty of, and I talk about it too. It's like, come on, my brother gave me the phone nickname of iBinky because I was always on it like a baby with a pacifier.
Yeah.
I'm sure Apple has that trademarked. If they don't, they should. Or somebody else can do it and then make a few $1 million off of Apple. They
You get
have
royalties. Yeah.
yeah, they have it. But they would probably win in court because it's so close, and Apple has more legal power than most of us do if we all combine our money together. But
Fair.
another story for another day. But ultimately, it just boils down to having boundaries around when you consume things and when you don't, and everybody's different when it comes to that. And I'm not about to say you should only check your emails at this, and this time. No, everybody's different, but I think we're both in agreement on, and we talked about this a little bit in the pre-show, where you have to really have boundaries around what kind of information you're consuming and how much of it, especially during times like we face right now with what's going on in the world and with the situation in the Ukraine, and of course, the recent developments and in Israel, in the Middle East, and all the players, and we are in a very combustive state right now, in my opinion, and I'm very, very concerned about what could come of all of this because it's one rocket or one bomb away from a full blown across the planet kind of thing. And I don't want to even use the words, but there's been two of them in our history, and it wouldn't shock me to see a third one. I just certainly hope I don't see it in my lifetime or for generations or quite frankly ever. But
Mhm.
it's a very frightening situation that we're facing in a lot of pockets of this world. And we talked about it again in the pre-show on how heavy it is for us and for people around the globe, and and even all sides of it. I'm not going to isolate one group versus another. It's heavy for everybody, and I really just it's hard on us, and it's hard on everybody, and I really wish it wasn't that way because it doesn't need to be that way, but it is. And I'd love to
Yeah.
hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, even as you're just shifted to that topic, I noticed my heart rate increase because it is such an activating time that we're in. And there are so many, so many global events and so many things that are overstimulating that, whether it's visuals of horrific violence or climate disaster, like all of these things that like we're seeing happen in real time. And we talked about this in the pre-show too. I think the difference now is that with social media and just being globally connected, we see everything happening in real time. And it's so much for our systems to take in. And when we're already carrying chronic stress from our work and from our family obligations and financial stress and all of these things just piled on, it's so imperative that we are defining our own boundaries with how much we're willing to take in, and then how we are proactively giving ourselves space to rest and recover. And really, yeah, like let us down regulate our nervous system response, because staying in this constantly activated state is a surefire, like fast track to burnout. And so I'm, noticing for myself what those boundaries need to be. And I was talking about just taking social media off my phone, because the thing with social media is I might go because I want to like soothe myself with like a kitten video, but you don't get to choose what you're served. So you might see something that you do not want to see, and you're kind of bombarded by that image, and before you even have a chance to scroll past it, like it's too late. You've already seen it and you can't unsee it. So yeah, I think this is a really important time for us to be turning inward and regulating, for ourselves, but also co-regulating with the people around us, with our animals, with pets. That's another great way to calm the nervous system, but just like finding those tools and practices that help us stay grounded when we're constantly being reactivated.
Yeah, and you make a great point, compared to, previous times of war and strife where, the information would come to us through news channels, cable news or broadcast news and whatnot. And you, of course, working in the media, you're well aware of this. There's a review of what we can put on the air and what we can't. And
Mhm.
sometimes they'll say, there's a warning, this is pretty graphic, but there's certain things that they will not put on. The thing with TikTok or Instagram or any other service where you can actually go live and show exactly what's going on in the world, not just from your balcony in Tel Aviv and seeing things, bombs and all of that, but even the people that are taking hostages and
Mhm.
some of the
Mhm.
things that we've been, I thankfully have somehow avoided seeing most of that because I just, but you hit it right on the head. You
Mhm.
launch Instagram, you want to see some cat videos or the memes of the cat driving, leaving work. One of my favorites was, you know, uh, can't find a parking spot at work. I'm going home. They have enough people. I just found that so hysterically funny, and just this white cat driving a car.
Yeah,
It's
that one.
comical,
Yeah,
and we need that type of silly humor in these really heavy times. But
yeah.
unfortunately, you launch it, it's kind of like a social media roulette. You're like, what am I going to get here? And it could be something, again, depending on who you follow, and it gets to the point where it's like, okay, do I unfollow everything? But you have to understand, the algorithms on these things, they will feed you content that you may have liked or looked at before. So even though you may not be following, let's say, a news agency, it's like, you've liked something from a similar organization before. Would you like to see this? And you're like, no, I don't want to see that right now. And
Right.
there's a lot of work that needs to be done around that from the social media standpoint. I am not one for censorship. But there has to be some humanity and we're not going to show graphic things that are going to be harming to the psyche of people that could consume it. I mean, you
100%.
could
Yeah,
traumatize somebody from that.
that's what it is. It's vicarious traumatization, where we are being traumatized by seeing these visuals and hearing stories, especially when it's like, I'm considering it almost like non-consensual when it happens in social media. And I realize it's my choice to open an app, but yeah, we can be traumatized. We are being traumatized by seeing this and hearing the sounds and the stories. And um I'm not advocating for putting our heads in the sand either and not being informed, because I think it's really important to be educated and to understand the situations that are happening. Just from a political perspective, we are like all connected, a humanitarian perspective more than anything. But to do it in a way where like it's at a time where we choose, where we feel resourced to do it, where it's not, going to just like take you out of your day when it's just a lot. It's been very, to me, it's been very kind of all consuming this week. So trying to figure this, how to walk this line for myself.
Yeah, and it's one size doesn't fit all.
Right.
It's what I do myself when times are challenging or down or, dealing with a bit of depression or anxiety or anything like that? Is it just like, okay, let's get back to the basics, okay, let's, whatever kind of brings you more of a relaxed or happy state. Could be meditation, could be listening to just, different sounds, brown noise, your favorite music, going, going for a drive and going back to your favorite coffee shop that is nearby. If you live across country, that's going to be a long drive, but you can find something local. Apparently there's coffee and tea shops in San Diego. I've heard a rumor. I don't bother with the frequent cards because I'd have to have like two wallets just for all of those things. So it's just not, it's like, that's okay. I'll let somebody else get a discount. But whatever you do, and this goes for obviously for you and everybody listening and watching, is just, figure out what those things are in life that you love doing that kind of brings you into I guess, a singular space where you're not thinking about work. You're not thinking about what's going on, overseas or in your own backyard or whatever. Just, get to, find that whatever it is. And sometimes it could be a physical object that you touch to remind yourself, okay, it's going to be okay. Right? I mean, right now we're in the midst of a storm, I forgot who said it. It was, I think Churchill, if you're going through hell, keep going. A lot of people have said that, don't stop, just keep going, through it, get through the storm and you'll be fine. In situations like what we're seeing right now, there's so many of us that feel powerless, but I think I want to flip the switch on that and saying, if you take care of yourself and you protect your energy and you protect your well-being and you get to a happy, loving state of yourself, making sure that you truly love yourself and you're taking care of yourself the best that you can, that emits an energy that people recognize, and hopefully they will pick up on it and they will do the same thing. So we can get to more of a harmonious state because we are one, one planet. Yes, there's these borders that were man-made, and a variety of other factors involved. I don't want to simplify things. It's complex, especially, since, some of these battles and things like that have been going on for a very, very long time. And it's to the point where I often say, do they even remember what they're fighting about? And it's, it's just, again, that's a simplification of the dynamics of everything that's going on over in Israel and Palestine, the Gaza Strip, and all of that. But it shouldn't require harming people. It should, let's talk about it. Let's figure out, because come on, people shouldn't be dying about this, but they are. And it's tough. But again, going back to, what we talked about originally, these type of things, can cause prolonged stress, which prolonged stress turns into burnout. So you have to be really careful about this. And I love what you said. Don't put your head in the sand, but you have to have some regulation and some boundaries around what you consume and how much you consume. I think back to my parents, they, my dad passed a few years ago, but they'd put on the news, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and that thing would run until 7 o'clock. So they were constantly getting gaslit with all the negativity that's going on in the world. Didn't matter which flavor of the news they were watching. It's got, unfortunately, there's a lot of negative things that the news agencies highlight because that's what gets ratings, unfortunately.
Yeah, fear. Yeah, it's a lot of fear. And I mean, rightly justified right now, but I wanted to just go back to something that you said about like finding those resourcing activities, meditation or being out in nature or taking a walk or talking to a friend. I think it's really important that we identify where these sources of safety are that really calm our systems, that help us come back to a sense of connection to ourselves, but also, I think most importantly, to other people. It's really important that we're checking in with each other, with our friends, our family, our loved ones, our colleagues, because everyone's experiencing this time. And in a different way, but it's pretty hard to not be affected by it. And so I think, just being really mindful of like, we're having our own personal experiences, but the people around us are as well. And so we have an opportunity to, as we've been talking about, like set an example of how to stay connected and how to stay present and how to take care of ourselves and each other. And that can look differently for everyone, but it's really whatever makes you feel safe and calm and connected, I would say, are like really the three main things.
And that applies to working in corporate as well.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
we talked about a lot of, real life, real heavy stuff here, but it's, yeah, kind of going back to what I said a moment ago. It's like sometimes you just go back to the basics, start at okay, let's start clean slate. Don't throw everything out, but just like, okay, we're gonna go in a different room that isn't used. Okay, let's kind of map this out. Let's start here and add the things we need to. It's kind of like the junk drawer in a way. That's probably not a great analogy, but we all have those, where there's a box or a drawer that's just filled with, I'll save this for later kind of thing. And you look at it and it's just like, what in the world? I don't even know what this thing is. Yeah. But eventually it's good to kind of clear that out, start with, a fresh slate, and you find things, I've been looking for that, or I don't need that anymore. And then a week later you realize, oh yeah, you did. But you can order it online anymore. That's, life is easier now when it comes to things like that. Yeah, well, they'll sell you that, little handle for your bread maker. What's that? We don't need this. Oops, yeah. Guess we can't make bread now. But at the end of the day, it's just a reminder for all of us, just to, we have to take care of ourselves, before we can take care of anybody else. And when we do
Yeah.
that, and we find, and it takes time, because especially when, and this, when people are burned out, they've kind of forgotten how to take care of themselves. And getting back to the basics of like, okay, what does taking care of yourself look like?
Mm-hmm.
Describe that,
Mm-hmm.
and give them the permission to, do that again.
Yeah.
Let's just start one
Yeah.
little step at a time. And when you do that, and it becomes a habit, and it's, it sticks around, then you start seeing other areas of your life improve. And then from there, all of a sudden you're like, well, you know what? Yeah, the stress from work is still there, but it's not impacting me the same way anymore. And I'm clearer now on what I need to do and what I don't. And it just, it turns around leaders, which turns around teams, which turns around groups and companies. And it's so simple to do, but it's really hard for people to do. And I think that's where we come in and we say, look, you can do this. You just got to approach it, a little bit differently than you have in the past. And you'll see big returns just by getting real crystal clear on what you want to do and what you don't.
Exactly. So well said. I think, I've found that often the people who experience burnout are the ones who consider themselves to be helpers and to have really big hearts and to want to make sure that everyone else is taken care of. Right. So as a leader, you put your team first, you put the business first, you put your clients first, and then you put your family and your friends first. And like, but before you know it, we have finite time, energy, and resources, and we ourselves are at the bottom of the list, and then we run out of juice to serve anybody else. So yeah, this isn't about like us doing anything wrong, but it's about turning some of that love and care and tending towards ourselves first, so that we can then continue to serve, right? To do it in a sustainable way, and continue to take care of our people.
You identify as a reformed people pleaser.
Yeah,
Um,
same.
there's a book, you're probably familiar with it. If not, definitely pick it up. It's called Disease to Please. It was by Harriet Breaker. It came out in 2000, I believe. And every couple years, it's my holiday present to myself to read that book again. It's got 21 days of exercises in it. It identifies all types of people pleasing. I thought I was a certain type of people pleaser, but after reading the book, I realized I was something else. And it was an aha moment for me when I
Yeah.
finished that book, and it alarmed me on, and it also gave me insights as to why one of the components why I burned out, because I was putting everybody else before me. I was like, I wouldn't delegate because they got too much work to do. I'll just go ahead and do
Right?
it. And
Absorb it all. Yeah.
yeah, so if you don't take care of yourself first, you're not going to take care of anybody. So, and when you do take care of people, they're getting a much better version of you. And that's one of those hurdles that a lot of people have to get over. Once they figure that out, they go, wow, I'm actually the best I can be. So I can be the best when I do give. So it's, and
Yeah, that's the thing.
I'll,
It's also modeling how to take care of ourselves. Like when, we sometimes we think, oh, I need to demonstrate to my team how to work hard and how to deliver results. And of course that's important, but there's one of the most impactful things that I saw an old manager of mine do. And this was probably 12 years into my career and was the first time I saw a manager take all of her paid time off during the year. Didn't roll over days. She used all of her time. She went to every one of her kids' recitals and school conferences, and she showed up for her personal life in a way I had never seen modeled before. And then it gave me permission to use my paid time off, and to recharge. That's why we have it. But I hadn't seen it before because I had only had the example of managers who are like, oh, I work through my vacations and I only take 2 weekends off a year. And like, there was some badge of honor in that. And I had to see it modeled in my own leader to realize like, oh, wow, that empowers me to do the same. And when I do it, it empowers my team to do the same. And this is how we prevent burnout. So, yeah.
Yeah, I had that badge of honor. Then it was turned into a badge of stents in my left anterior descending artery. So
Right?
I don't want to do that again.
No,
That was not fun.
no, no.
Um, but at the end of the day, it's important for us to take care of ourselves, because when we do that, we're actually taking care of others as well. So, Eric, I've loved this conversation. We could talk for hours, you know
Yeah.
that. But where can people find out more about you and all this amazing work you're doing?
Yeah. Well, you can follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram once I go back on there. I am on LinkedIn regularly at Erica Zygelman, or my website, ericazygelman.com. I would love to connect with any listeners or viewers of the show. I offer one-on-one coaching and group coaching and work with corporate teams on conscious leadership, burnout prevention, all the topics we talked about. And yeah, it's been such a pleasure, and love, being able to share our experience and empower others with this knowledge.
No, thank you. And I'll definitely have all that information in the show notes. So, Erica, always good to talk with you. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Likewise, thank you so much.